mass will get half the speed. And so now you're going to see that one car will go twice as slow as the other. That's the only way that nature can conserve momentum. Nature has no choice. Nature can deal with kinetic energy one way or another, but it cannot finagle momentum. So it must give the more massive car half the speed than it gives the other car. And so we...
Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. Debate physics, but the debate is in this useless form of crap comments by crappy people. And that's all there really is. So we'll read a couple of these on a Brozo channel. The interesting thing is, so Piro commented, and they're just little snarkyisms. And you're just saying, well, why doesn't he, tell us what he thinks? I mean, what does he think of the Mythbusters video that almost perfectly proves the non-existence of kinetic energy? I mean, the outcomes are just decisive. So how did it go so wrong? Yeah. Why doesn't he draw a lever and show us how they work? Answer the simple questions, and he evades all of that because he's a coward. A shit-talking, fanatic coward. Okay. Then Mindless Marvel says this charming pile of crap. Does Gary really think a bunch of YouTube randos? So he thinks randos is a... Anyway, so I guess he's saying random YouTube videos. No, they're random, say, science videos, but okay. Are going so far as to outright fake experiments. Well, I just proved pretty much that Professor Lewin, an MIT experiment, was rigged, okay, to produce the results. They're trying to validate a formula. So, yeah, the idea that you fake it by, you have it a little crooked, you have this a little bit off. You have some little variable that you've fucked up, and it works, okay? So the experiment comes out the way you want it to. Yeah, that's not really possible, huh? That can't possibly happen. Yeah, it can happen. Alright, like this to get him. So obviously I'm not saying those videos even are referencing my argument. They're clearly just all propagandists. They're all for the stupid, idiotic subject. They all think it's the truth that you can make free momentum. And again, not one response to the argument that free momentum is free energy. So, I mean, let's ask Piro, right? Is free momentum, that is, I have a certain momentum, and then I increase something's momentum, which is increasing its weight, which is an increase in energy. You can't think of it any other way, right? It takes energy to compress a spring. A spring is measuring weight. So it's, more compression of the spring is more weight. That has to be more energy. So how can I make free energy? We kind of know those things don't work, don't we? I mean, do you agree that anything that makes any free energy is a problem in physics, in the sense that obviously you could just redo the experiment over and over and over again, keep making more and more free energy? This question won't be answered, okay? These cowards won't answer the fucking question. How is free momentum not a problem? Alright, the sad thing is we all know that the last few centuries of science was all a big hoax. What it was really stupid. Really stupid arguments were made in defense of really stupid ideas. I could go to the Bohr response to Einstein, Bogolsky, and Rosen, whoever it was, where they actually had the papers in the wrong order in the publication. So he wrote a response, and you could mix up the papers. So you had page 2 first, then page 4, then page 1, then page 6. They were in the wrong order, and people didn't even notice. So I could make arguments that, well, the silly people won for really stupid reasons because physics became some sort of fun thing. What is it fun to believe in? Not what the facts indicate. So yeah, I'd say the Bohr model is a hoax. I'd say your whole wave theory of the two-slit is a hoax. It doesn't work. Two waves don't create the real double-slit pattern. Not mathematically, not physically, not in any way possible. it doesn't work. It doesn't create the same pattern that's created in light. It doesn't get right answers. And you just keep saying we have the most proven theory in the history of mankind. Prove to do what? Get wrong answers? So it's almost like a quantum computer, right? The quantum computer does not compute anything rational. The only thing it can do faster than a regular computer is make mistakes. It makes mistakes exceedingly fast. But it doesn't do anything logical fast. Oh, God, you're such a lying sack of shit not to recognize that maybe physics made some mistakes. They never even fixed plus and minus being wrongly assigned. Again, I've been through all of these arguments 400 times. This guy did astronomy work. 400 times better resolution from space, and they never even tried the Eddington experiment. It takes 5 fucking minutes. 5 minutes of satellite time to do the experiment. Never done from space. 400 times better resolution. That's a plausible, reasonable oversight of physics. Oh, we don't need to really establish any of this stuff with really good evidence. We'll just skip that part. Alright, if you don't call that hoax, what do you call it? Shenanigans, bullshit, laziness. Yes, they have a lack of interest in finding the truth because they wish to believe in fables. Oh, shit. Alright, oh my God. The smell of your sausage-based anti-science will be hard to clear the air of. Well, that's just not very interesting at all. So this is a retarded video he did say, how I cheated my science experiment. Again, the argument isn't that you're a cheater. The argument is that you're a pig and a moron. That's the argument. And you pretty much demonstrated, yes, that's what you are. Okay, you're a step lower than a hillbilly, okay, and you're pretending to do nuclear physics. Fuck, pathetic moron. Anyway, it's all right. So then we got 5 million comments by Franklin, who, I mean, just. So anyway, let me do some Piro stuff. So just for Piro, and we'll just show what a coward he is because he won't answer these simple questions. And they're really, really simple, right? I mean, this lever argument is really simple. So pick a position, okay? So we know that if I put a 2 mass here and a 2 mass here, so I drop a 2 mass any distance right here, and I have a 2 mass sitting right here. Do we agree that this leaves with just about the same energy that this went in, right? We lose a little bit to the lever, but generally speaking, this will be an equal reaction minus losses, 5%, whatever the number is. Okay, we don't know. I don't know the number for a tennis ball is 25%. I didn't, that's pretty high. You could argue a spring is whatever, 8% or something. I don't know. Depends on the spring, doesn't it? I guess how much you lose with each interaction due to frictions and impacts and different things. So if I was to put a 1 mass here instead, so I have a 1 mass here and I get rid of this, okay, no more of this, we know they weigh the same, okay, that the weight here feels like 2. So if I pushed on this and this wasn't here, it would feel like a 2 mass here. And that it balances perfectly on the lever. And as I showed on my own porch, it oscillates perfectly. I put whatever energy I put in here, it'll oscillate 50 times. Go back and forth, so it's not losing much energy because it oscillates 50 times. I mean, it's a lot of oscillations. I had it on a string to reduce the size of the fulcrum, to reduce the fulcrum's capacity to steal much energy. But anyway, and what happens when it oscillates? This moves twice the velocity, okay, and this moves 1 velocity, and they have inverse masses. And momentum makes perfectly good sense. Okay, so let's say I do it. I drop the 2 here and I have the 1 mass out here. What do you say this leaves with? Alright, that's all. Is that too complicated a question? Is it too challenging? What's your prediction? Is your prediction 1.4? Okay, so it loses 0.6. I mean, it's a huge amount of energy to lose. 0.6 of what would have been the increase, so you could say it loses 1/3 of the momentum. 1/3 of the momentum just disappears, lost to the universe. And you won't have any explanation how the fulcrum experienced any more. The losses, more losses through the fulcrum because I had this version of the weight versus this version of the weight. That somehow, because I moved it somewhere on the lever, I changed completely how the fulcrum works and I lost 1/3 of the total energy. No, the total momentum. Let's just use the right words. So anyway, just tell me, what speed does this leave at? 1.4 or twice the velocity? Which one is the truth? Which one's the experimental fact? Okay, now I'd argue that Brozo already did this experiment, and guess what? This one won. Okay, very close to this, very far from this. All right, like here. Okay, very, very close to this one winning. Okay, 1911, you know, very, very close to half. So just answer the question. Is that too challenging? And then again, I mean, we all saw the Mythbusters experiment. Okay, you have the weight, and you have a clump of clay on it. Okay, you do it at one velocity. It compresses the clay this much. You do it at twice the velocity. It compresses the clay this much. There's no sign of 1.4s anywhere. No sign of twice the energy. This wasn't 1/4, okay, of the compression. No, just half. Twice the velocity, okay. What's the challenge? Why can't you just answer these questions? Just answer the questions and show how you know real physics and I'm an idiot. So go ahead and prove I'm an idiot by explaining what you think. How do you think levers work? Do you think you have to conserve momentum, or do you think you conserve kinetic energy? Which one? I mean, Professor Lewin obviously thinks nature can finagle kinetic energy, but it can't finagle momentum. So why don't you tell us, which side do you fall on? Do you think nature can finagle momentum and it conserves kinetic energy? Kinetic energy is the real energy. You don't see how this is a pick side thing, right? I mean, that's how the whole debate started, was a pick side, right? In the first 50 years of the debate, Newton won, and everybody picked this side. And then all of a sudden, because of the, science moved to France and Germany, all of a sudden it became this horse shit. And you're saying, yeah, physics got it right. That wasn't a mistake. Oh no, that was finding the truth. Even though there was no good reason to find that truth. No, there wasn't any problem in Newton's physics that needed fixing, and yet they fixed it anyway. That's your theory. No discernible problem. No discernible thing that just didn't make any sense. Levers weren't broken, pressurized vessels weren't broken, everything was working just fine, and but we need to fix it. Because the answer is 1.4. So I'm just saying, it has to be conceded. Piro is a coward. He hasn't responded to a single one of these arguments. He hasn't in any way explained where I'm making a fundamental mistake in my understanding of the mechanical systems. And again, so do you believe in free momentum? So I can have something going 50 miles an hour, I put it in my little special device and it comes out going 60 miles an hour. That's not a free energy machine. Is that too challenging a fucking question? Fuck. Oh, he's just such a weasel. Such a horrid, stinking, lousy, rotten human being. Talk all this shit and back it up with nothing. Alright, and so, this conversation with Franklin is going absolutely nowhere, but whatever. Yeah, I'll just, it's worth responding. I mean, he posts, something I really hate. He's listening to the video and posting comments, no doubt. And really, watch the whole video, take notes, do something, write one coherent response. Don't do this pieces of crap all over the place thing. I don't like it personally. Alright, so I think we already read this, but we'll do it again. Let's be clear. It is fair to use the existence of protons and electrons, which are well accepted within mainstream. So again, this I don't have to meet mainstream's acceptance standards. It's just too silly. My whole point is mainstream has it wrong. Why do I have to accept anything they say, except I have to accept evidence? What do levers actually do? That's what the question is. What do you think levers actually do? Do they conserve momentum or do they conserve kinetic energy? You tell me. All right. What you cannot do is invent corresponding force bits. So let's understand the idea of a bit of force is not my invention exclusively. The point is that's been around a long time. That's what Newton believed. Corpuscle. He called them core fucking puzzles. Now, if I said a force corpuscle, would that be legal language then? It's legal to say corpuscle? All right. Feynman called them clumps. Okay. Is clump okay? What the fuck is this moronic statement that I invented the idea that it's particle physics? I invented the concept of particle physics, that the force is also a particle. So the whole word quantum has to do with the fact that the goddamn stuff is in quantized little pieces. It comes in clumps. That's what quantum was invented to describe. So that's the irony of this horseshit. Of course, conventional physics accepts quantized units of force. Fuck you. This is an idiotic... you can't do that. Yeah, I can. God damn. I mean, how silly is this? Yes, I believe in a particle universe. You don't. Okay, that's your business. Not my problem. Oh, shit. Anyway. I mean, he believes, okay, we know stuff travels in the universe at the speed of light. What is the speed of light, for fuck's sake? I'm arguing it's stuff moving from one point A to point B at the speed of light. You're saying it's some sort of vibration moving through whatever they are, the stuff in empty space, the electrons that you say are the only particle. But sometimes you call them a positron because, you know, on Tuesdays they're positrons or some kind of bullshit. Anyway, which is not accepted within mainstream. So again, it's just this acceptance by mainstream is just nonsense. There's nothing that should be accepted by anything other than a preponderance of the evidence. Okay, so I don't have any other obligation than to be obedient to what the evidence says, and you have no evidence that particles don't explain the universe. All right. The one experiment you cannot explain, yes I can, is why at near absolute zero. So he's going to describe an experiment. So near absolute zero, which you know there's no such thing, right? So nothing can be all the heat can't be extracted out of anything. Okay, just so far impossible. We see atomic matter actually disappearing. So we see. So I love this comment. We see atomic matter actually disappearing. Says you. Okay, it's an experiment. You're saying your interpretation of the experiment is the matter disappeared. We're obviously not sitting there. You're obviously not saying, okay, let's freeze this thing, and if I freeze it to absolute zero, its matter will disappear. What a pile of shit. Okay, you don't have any such experiment. There is nothing in your theory to suggest why ambient thermal energy would have any effect upon your atoms. Well, of course, energy, any form of extra excitement and agitation is going to have an effect. The whole argument is photons are a reflection off the object. If the object's moving, it's going to be vibrating the photons. Okay, it's going to be changing their frequency. Duh. So of course it's relevant to my theory. So that's just pile of crap comment. Alright, I would agree that things like the atom are completely unbelievable. So this is the hilarious part. He just told me I have to conform to mainstream's accepted truths. And then you say, well, no, their atom is unbelievable. Now, I certainly didn't say completely unbelievable. I'm just saying one part of their theory of an atom is wrong. The electrons aren't swirling, they're not orbiting. Okay, I made it kind of clear. I'm just saying it's a magnetic model. They have the same basic distance from the proton. All that stuff is the same. The only difference is that a shared electron is not spinning around both objects and doing all this orbiting crap. It's in one location, and the nucleons are in the same location, and the whole thing can rotate a little. This can happen, but no, the electron itself is not orbiting anything. That's the only difference, pretty much. So completely unbelievable isn't what we're agreeing on. I'm not saying it's completely unbelievable. Okay. But I was specifically referring to you not believing in the positron. And again, I'll keep just saying it. It's just ludicrous for you to say I must believe in a positron when you really can't show me any experiment demonstrating it has to be a positron. You don't have any such experiment. Okay. You didn't address that in this video. I did address it. I pointed out how you don't have any evidence of this, and all the rest of it is just stories they tell. There's two images, image A, image B. Okay, and so the two images are different, and they're just making up a story to tell you why there's now a bird on top of the guy's head. Right? There's no bird in this picture, there's a bird in the next picture. And they're just making up a story and saying, well, how the bird got there. Well, a positron did it. You don't have any evidence. You have none of the needed photographs showing the bird coming in and, being pushed by positrons. You have no evidence of that. All right. There's very hard evidence. So this is just, I'm sorry, that's just such a fucking lie. You can't make that kind of statement in any kind of genuine, honest way. It's the softest evidence possible. It's so indirect. So, if he was really sincere, if he wasn't just a fanatic, like a crazy Muslim or something, then he would use like a more reasonable statement. Say, yes, I realize the evidence is a little obscure, it's a little bit, convoluted, a little bit mathematical, a little bit this, a little bit that. But, if you add it all up, it provides a pretty persuasive argument. So instead of saying something moderately sensible, he says this idiotic statement like it's the hardest evidence. Like the sun, the existence of the sun is almost more uncertain than the existence of the positron. The positron has more evidence than the existence of the sun. I mean, it's clearly not hard evidence. What do you call the evidence of the existence of the sun? Hard evidence? I mean, how many times are you going to keep using the word? I mean, is that how you decide how much evidence there is? How much evidence is there that trees exist? Is that hard or just hard evidence? I mean, fuck you and that statement. I mean, it's just so obnoxious. The evidence is so fucking puny and weak. And you're sitting there saying something like that. Come on. You're being totally unreasonable there. There is very hard evidence for the positron. So there really isn't. That's just a story. If the positron didn't really exist, I love this part, right? So this is just like what they say, we couldn't have computers without the belief in entanglement and superposition and all the other wacky crap we invented. Bullshit. Okay? I mean, it's just so stupid because, things like the photo detector, right? were essentially invented before Einstein. I mean, they essentially already had a device that would create an electrical current when you hit it with light. So they already had the basics of the invention, and they didn't really make it commercially viable until the 50s. So, I mean, it's just kind of funny that, they invented this stuff way before they even had any of this crappy theory. And then they say, we wouldn't have computers if it wasn't for. Yes, we would. Because they already knew about how they could manipulate the substances to create effects. And all they did was perfect them. If the theory was right, and they all just obeyed the theory, then it wouldn't have taken them 20 years to develop the blue LED. All right. Because they had to just do a lot of trial and error. They had to just come up with a lot of wacky experiments to see if they could make these change, if they could get more energy out of the LED. So this is just bullshit. It's trial and error. Okay, not theory. All right. So anyway. then how could they be saving people's life with PET scanners? Well, they're completely misidentified objects, okay? There's no such thing as positron emission therapy, okay? It doesn't emit positrons. They're just part of the picture thing. They have a picture here and a picture here, and then they make up the story where the positron is. All right, I mean, I already pointed it out. I shouldn't have to keep going over and over it again, but no, they shoot... they inject you with a radioactive isotope, and then they cause it to decay faster by exposing it to radiation. All right, and that's all they do. There's no positrons necessary. It's just a way of localizing radioactive exposure, and that's all there is. There's no obligation to believe in positrons. All right. Using something imaginary. So whatever. Yes, of course. I mean, for you to not concede that their whole theory about anything, I could have a frog jump and they could tell me, well, part there, the gluons were bouncing back and forth, and then the stretchons were doing this, and then the Higgs boson was doing this, and the fucking some other thing was doing something else. They'd come up with a whole bizarre abstract theory about what happened when the frog jumped from one rock to another. You think all that shit has to be true? You're too silly. Alright, my theory only has one particle. So this is where it just goes into the realm of being just, this guy's like a UFO nut. You can't say that, frankly. It's just idiotic. One particle with 5 million, it's a Swiss Army knife. Yeah, it's one particle, that does everything. No chance. Fuck you, too silly. I'm sorry. I spent 10 years doing this. I've been through all the, how could I make it one step simpler? There's just no way to do that. Alright. The positron is just an electron moving in an opposite motion. Whatever the fuck that could mean. An opposite motion. What the fuck is an opposite motion? What is that? What's an opposite motion? Sorry, I just can't figure out. So all the positrons are going left, right, and the electrons are all going right, left. Alright, let's play with that. Sorry, as an electron. So only one particle and only one force. Okay, and there's no force, right? So, I mean, he says there's a force, but there's no force because he won't tell me what the force is. So the force is just the positron going left, right, and the electron going right, left. And somehow, okay, they move a bunch of other crap in between them. Okay. Which just happens to move at the speed of light based on the frequency of this left-right thing. Okay. The problem with left-right is you're going to get into the push-pull problem, frankly. So, as I pointed out, you can't have a wave that has a negative cycle and then a positive cycle and then say they constructively interfere, because they don't. Because they push and then they pull. So they can never push on something because they always end up pulling on something. So that doesn't work. Newsflash. Which arises due to Newtonian collision. So again, I don't know why he has to put this Newtonian word in here. Does that mean kinetic energy? Because kinetic energy isn't Newtonian. Okay. Newton believed in momentum. I would argue that is simpler than your 6 principles. So I don't care if it's simpler, you haven't explained shit with it. Okay, I've pointed out exactly how charges function. Creating the inverse square law, creating the strength of the charge, the whole thing is explained perfectly. Diagrammed just like Maxwell drew a charge. Doing exactly what Maxwell says a charge should do. Let's see you do that. Let's see you draw that picture. Let's see you draw a picture. Okay, of course quarks don't exist. So this is the guy who just told me everything has to meet with the existent standards of conventional physics, and now he's saying conventional physics is wrong. So they're right about positrons. So the crappy evidence they have for a positron is somehow much better than the evidence they have for quarks. Now, I would argue that most physicists, if you ask them which one do you have more confidence in, they would say more confidence in quarks. So that's kind of funny. But electrons, positrons, neutrons exist. So he's making a neutron out of a positron and an electron, which is the wrong weight. So we know that don't happen. So again, another experiment demonstrates that no, when you deconstruct neutrons, you end up with protons and electrons. You don't end up with positrons and electrons. We can create beams of this, so that you say again, we can. Okay, where? Show me your beam machine. So this isn't any better than them calling the electron gun when it's really the ion gun. It's lots of kind of gun. Lots of stuff are flying out of the gun. So this is just fibrology, whatever. Beams of this, and they exist long enough to experiment with them. Well, I mean, they're positrons. They should exist just like electrons. They should be quite durable. I don't understand why you think electrons are pretty durable, but positrons aren't. Why would that be true? Again, you can't see how it doesn't really make any sense that these positrons weren't in any experiment discovered, like electrons were. That they just really didn't show themselves anywhere until whatever, 1950 or something. You don't see a flaw in that? Anyway. But we cannot create a beam of W or Z bosons or Higgs particles. Well, yeah, because they don't last long enough. So, but regardless, you don't have a beam of positrons. And that is how you can tell if it's a particle is fake. So obviously, even that logic is silly. Obviously, if the particle doesn't exist, it falls apart or it attaches to something much quicker, then yeah, you can't make a beam out of it, because a beam requires you to travel a pretty far distance without disappearing, turning into something else. So I can't make a beam of dust or something. It's the wrong example. I'm trying to think of something that falls apart really easy. I don't know. What? Captain Crunch? Certain things, if I try to make a beam out of them, they just disintegrate, just fall apart. Doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means you can't make a beam out of something that falls apart really easy. I mean, like oatmeal or something. Just too silly. You don't have to explain where the proton and electron come from, since we all agree that those exist. Well, why do you say there's such a thing as a proton when you just said there's only one particle, an electron? I mean, you don't see how this is just mush? Okay. We do not have any similarity agreed upon. We do not have any similarly agreed upon force bit. So again, I don't care. All right, that's not my problem. I don't agree upon your wave bit. Okay, I don't see any medium form, and I don't see any way that it works. So, fine. We'll leave it at that. Okay, I can imagine waves, but I can't imagine how they can possibly work, because there is no example, and you won't show anything demonstrating it. You won't make any diagram of a function that creates the same mechanism as charge, something that creates this incredibly strong force between two objects. So you have to create an incredibly strong force between these two objects, these charged elements. Incredibly strong, nuclear bomb strong. That's the force. It's nuclear bomb strong. That's what you have to show with your model. Okay, so you have to justify its independent existence. Alright, we don't have any similarly agreed upon force bit, so you have to justify its independent existence. It's a description of the element that already exists. The argument is that right now you're being hit by force bits. They're shoving you into the earth. The argument is that every object is reflecting force bits. They're called photons, and when they're in a frequency, they're a photon. When they're not at the right frequency, then they're radio or some other ton. but that's what they are. They're little tiny bits of Morse code, little dots and dashes you want to call it, or just dots. But yes, the dots convey momentum under pretty simple rules. There's just 2 rules. Wet, dry kind of rules. Okay. So you have to justify its independent existence. Otherwise, you could just say that Casper, the friendly ghost. See, the funny part is when I was reading these comments, I'm saying, Jesus Christ, how is he so fucking caught up in this horse shit? You know, this conventional bullshit, and I have to explain to him why the convention is wrong. I'm saying, gee, that shouldn't be my obligation. So it's like I'm trying to convince him that his imaginary friend as a child isn't a real thing. And so I have to do that first before he can even see the truth. He can't even come close to the truth until I get this ghost out of his way. So it's exactly what I thought of. I said ghost, and then I thought of Casper, the friendly ghost. I said, yeah, I have to kill Casper before his brain will work. So that's the thought I had before I read this comment. So that's kind of ironic. I mean, those are, those kind of coincidences are terribly charming. Anyway, otherwise I could just say that Casper the friendly ghost is what is responsible for charge. Right, and that's not what I'm saying, quite obviously. So you think it's ghostly, okay, to have force bits and matter bits. Force bits move the speed of light, the matter bits don't move until they're pushed by a force bit. And you're saying that's a ghost theory. Okay, I'm saying that's a silly statement on your part. Okay, and that would be an equally valid theory. So the point is I'm arguing that I can match the output of experiments. I will explain the 2-slit experiment in more detail and more completely and more accurately than anyone else on this planet currently. I will do that. I can do that. And I can only do it because I have a theory that's different than theirs. Mine works, theirs doesn't. That's the whole fucking point. I'll explain the radar experiment. I'll explain the radio experiment. I'll explain what polarization, antenna polarization is, and then I'll explain why photons have a kind of antenna polarization. I'll explain all of that, and they'll explain none of that. And you'll certainly not succeed, because we already saw you fail at polarization, because you think it's a picket fence going this way and the photons are going between the pickets. Well, I had that idea at first too, but it's not actually how it works. The photon that gets through are the ones going opposite the pickets. But anyway, details, details. The LHC can tell the exact velocity of a particle as it travels through the layers of detectors and can determine the exact mass. So how are they determining the exact mass? 1/2 mv squared. That's how. So if that formula is a pile of archaic nonsense, religious kookery, if it's a mistake, okay, which I think is obviously a mistake, then all of their calculations are wrong. All the particle physics goes right down the toilet. It's all bullshit, because they have all the energies wrong. And if they have the energies wrong, they have the particle wrong. All right. So right there, you've just made the argument for me. You've just emphasized my point. They'll tell the exact nothing, okay, because they don't have an exact formula. All right. The problem with simulations is that you can program them to do anything. Well, that's your accusation. So if you want to make a formal accusation that the simulation is doing anything other than the little tiny rule I made, all I did was make, okay, there's the electron, okay, is the wet force maker. See, I could use square peg round hole, but let's just keep with the car wash thing. So they're like little car washes. So the cars are the force bits, and the electron's a car wash, and the proton's a car wash. And the difference is the electron dries the cars, it doesn't wash them, and it doesn't make them wet. And the proton takes dry cars and makes them wet. And the catch is, cars that are already dry bounce off and push the car wash. They bang into it and push it because it won't let them in. And cars that are wet can't get into the proton. They bang into it. Okay? And every car that goes through the wet car wash comes out dry, comes out wet. So a dry car goes in, a wet car comes out. The other one, a wet car goes in, a dry car comes out. And if you do that simple little thing, then the two car washes that are opposite, a dry car wash and a wet car wash will produce cars, okay, that don't bounce off of each other, that are compatible. The dry one goes into the wet one, it comes out dry, it goes into the other one, and they completely compatible, they'll move right into each other. And the opposites, two dry washers, two electrons, they keep producing dry cars, they'll move away from each other. So they'll do exactly what charge is obligated to do. So there's nothing wrong with the simulation. The simulation is duplicating the simple rules I outlined. It's not doing anything else. It has a standard force bit moving a standard speed, and it just obeys those two little stupid car rules. And that's it. So this accusation that I programmed it or cheated it or frauded it or some other bullshit is just that. It's a bullshit accusation. Okay, it does exactly what you can program it to do. Yes, I programmed it to behave in this little simple two-rule way. Two kinds of interactions. That's all there are in the universe. Two kinds of interactions. Make dry cars wet, make wet cars dry. That's it. And that explains everything. Okay. While there are valid reasons for using simulations, well, yeah, the reason is people need to see things. So, yeah, that's the only way you can make the invisible visible is to do a simulation. There still needs to be experimental validation. Well, the experimental validation comes in the end consequences. You'll never see a videotape of photons hitting electrons. It's never going to happen. So if that's what you're waiting for, then you're not going to enjoy physics much. Validation of the simulations. The whole reason why the simulations are being created is because they match an experimental outcome. So that's already been done. The simulation shows that the simple rules produce the outcome. We're not talking about justifying the two-slit or kinetic energy. You're not talking about it. I think they're two of the most important subjects on planet Earth, frankly. One of them destroys the whole kinetic energy the whole entanglement, Copenhagen, superposition, all of that horse shit is thrown away because it's all based on a misinterpretation of the two-slit experiment. And the kinetic energy one kind of blows up all of Einstein's horse shit about relativity and gravity not being a real force. So yeah, these two subjects are really important. I mean, as I just pointed out, all of everything they say about quantum mechanics and how it's the most proven theory in the history of mankind, and we've weighed the electron to 500 digits. All of that's based on this rotten formula. So all of that goes into the dumpster. The question is how to justify the existence of the force bit coming out of the electron. The question is how to justify the existence of the force bit coming out of the electron. Why? Something goes in, something comes out. The Earth is doing it right now. Stuff goes in, stuff comes out. Comes out different than what it went in. So that concept of it coming out different than it went in is impossible for you to understand. Ultraviolet light hits the Earth and infrared leaves the Earth. That's impossible for you to understand. Fuck you. I don't think it is. Okay, you are not justifying the force bit. I don't have to justify it again. Newton didn't have to justify saying it looks like a corpuscle. Feynman said it's got to be a corpuscle because those things don't work that way. And then Einstein made it clear that, well, it's got to be a quantum of energy, and a digit of energy has to be a clump, and so what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, it's clumpy. Okay, why bring out kinetic energy? Well, as I already pointed out, because it's wrong, it's stupid physics, it's retarded, it comes up with these idiotic statements that 5-ton trains going 10 miles an hour have twice as much energy as 10-ton trains going 5 miles an hour. It says things that just aren't fucking goddamn true. So why shouldn't I be opposed to things physics says that aren't true? Isn't that likely to be fertile ground for lots of other mistakes? I mean, you don't think there's lots of shit broken in the mathematics of physics because they never fixed plus and minus? Alright. It is not relevant to you. Frankly, I see it as relevant to everything. I mean, not understanding energy correctly couldn't be like more fundamental to doing something called physics. Physics is about energy. It's about why things move and how they move. I mean, fuck, what else is physics? Physics is everything that happens. We're talking about a phenomenon that happens. It only happens because there's energy in the system, the movement of stuff. That's the whole fucking subject of physics. And they have a silly, moronic, preposterously nonsensical definition of what that energy is. They can say that, well, equal and opposite reactions, except the gun has 2 joules of energy and the bullet has 2,000 joules of energy. The bullet will change the universe 2,000 times more than the gun. Do you believe that? So you have 1,000 atoms moving 1 mile an hour, or you have 1 atom moving 1,000 miles an hour. Their theory is the 1 atom moving 1,000 miles an hour has 2,000 times more capacity to change the universe than that one, 1,000 times. It doesn't. It's nonsense. It doesn't weigh more. 1,000 atoms pushing, okay, with 1 pound of pressure is the same as 1 pushing with 1,000 pounds of pressure. Same difference. All right. If your theory only relies upon the existence of the electron, what? If your theory only relies upon the existence of the electron, what? Then my theory escapes the problem that I have to invent something in order to explain the universe. What? Well, sorry, that one I missed it. If your theory only relies upon the existence of the electron, so he's saying his theory, so he only has the electron, even though he calls it a positron. Then my theory escapes the problem that I have to invent something in order to explain the universe. Well, what you have to do is give that electron about 675 million features. It's got to have all kinds of forks and can openers and all kinds of things that pop out of it, because the universe is obviously a little more complicated than just electrons banging into electrons. If space is constructed of electrons, then it should be experimentally possible to prove that. Well, obviously, I would argue that yes, if empty space was electrons, we'd already know it. And so we don't know it, so your theory's in big trouble, frankly. Your force bits can never be seen. Yes, no energy moving the speed of light can be seen by anything ever. So, yes, that's true of your wave bits, or your wavicles, or whatever the fuck you want to call them. But the electrons and positrons, which is bullshit, in my space can be experimentally seen. So go ahead, show me a picture of an electron, and more importantly, show me the picture of a positron. No, I don't think that's going to happen. My basic phase interactions can be demonstrated in clear experiments. Okay, so this is all just talk. Why don't you produce these experiments then? Why just talk about your clear experiments when I'm sure they're not clear at all? Okay, which doesn't require the creation of an arbitrary function. There's no arbitrary function, it's an essential function. It's the entire reason why the universe functions, is because of the function. So yes, if there weren't matter bits that dry cars and matter bits that wet cars, then there wouldn't be anything happening in the universe. Which you cannot explain how it works. Well, I don't need to explain every single bit. I just need to explain everything from 6 elemental functions, 2 force bits, 2 matter bits, 2 interactions. Now, everything after that I'll explain. So my theory does not fail due to the postulation of an arbitrary function. So again, this is just idiotic. You've already given them arbitrary functions. You're telling me that the electron resonates at a frequency. What is that? But if that's not a function, how's it do that? How's it do this? He says resonate, right, which doesn't even say anything. Where does the energy come from? Yeah, he doesn't explain that. All right. Anyway, if you replace one question, how does the charge work, with another equally baffling problem? So they're baffling to you. I've already answered the questions, in my opinion, quite well, of how force bits work. Again, how they work is described. Okay. Now you're saying, why do they exist? I'm not going to be able to answer that question. But how they work, I've described. I mean, in the sense that they have a feature, a function. Okay. Now, whether it's making things wet, or whether it's making round things and square things, or whether, whatever the dichotomy, the difference is, I can't tell you that, because I can't photograph them to see what the difference is. Is the difference one wears a wristwatch and one doesn't wear a wristwatch? I don't know. I can't take a picture of them. I can't see what the difference is. But they're obviously doing something distinctly different, and they're doing it in an inverse manner. That seems clear. Why wouldn't any also want to know why that basic function works? So again, the question isn't wanting to. The question is, nobody will ever answer those kind of questions about the most infinitesimally small things moving in the universe. You will never know. There will never be a ruler to measure it with. That paradox has already been, that was around like 1,000 years ago. They had already figured out that that's going to get kind of complicated, is it? How do what ruler do I use to measure the smallest thing in the universe? Because it's smaller than the ruler. You know what I mean? I can't make a ruler that can measure it. Why did we want to know how charge works? Because it's an obvious, viewable phenomenon. And so, so we want to know. But again, you're asking me this, the idea that why wouldn't I want to know how the universe exists at all, doesn't change the fact that I can't know that. You're not going to access that answer to that question. Unless you want to talk to God, maybe that's your physics. It relies upon another opposite reaction function. It isn't that it cannot happen, but the point is that we're not solving the mystery. Well, of course it solves the fundamental mystery. You want to know why electrons attract protons and why protons repel protons and all that stuff. That's all you want to know. Why do they behave the way they do? That I've answered, and with a very simple explanation. But fuck you. This is just so tedious. One of the predictions of my theory, who could care, is that you should be able to experimentally detect the electron resonant frequency, which should be about 10 to the 20 hertz. So I guess you just made that up. You just pulled that number out of your ass or something. I don't know. But anyway, so what? So let's say there's this preposterously high frequency that current technology doesn't allow us to detect. Okay. If you ask wave in what? Yes, that's one of the points I would have made. They are waving in a sea of neutrons. So big giant things are oscillating as fast as a little tiny thing. So the little tiny thing is oscillating at preposterous high frequency, and the big giant things oscillate at the preposterously high frequency. Okay, sure they do. Neutrons are made out of positron-electron dipoles. So again, this is more mush. So where did conventional physics say that? Where did they say that a neutron is a positron and an electron dipole? Now, I would argue that neutrons are dipoles, but it's obviously a proton and an electron, not a positron. Size is more related to charge radius, so the neutron would have an extremely small charge radius compared to an electron, which would be huge. So that doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, he's saying the thing made out of a neutron and a positron, which is really an electron and an electron. I mean, yeah, an electron and an electron, except one of the electrons is left-right instead of right-left. So there are two electrons, and one of them is oscillating, you know, right-left, right-left, and the other one's going left-right, left-right. And, but somehow that, when it decays, will decay into what? A proton and an electron? That doesn't sound possible. Oh, no, what he's saying is, so I have an electron and a positron, and somehow, because they're close to each other, they're smaller than an electron. Now, it can't be smaller than an electron. So that doesn't work. All right. The frequency is the normal EM wave, which should be experimentally detectable at 10 to the 20 hertz again. So it just says the same thing. Who cares? Totally uninteresting, frankly. You know, again, I see no hope of this stupid wave crap being at all relevant. Waves are emergent phenomenon. They aren't elemental phenomenon. So whatever your wave is, it's going to be a wave in what? Okay, and you can't have small things wave big things. Okay, you don't get to the best part where I show that the positron exists. You didn't show it, so that's just a lie. You didn't show anything. You drew a picture of a positron. You just said, here's a positron. That proves positrons exist because you drew one on the board? I mean, it's just insane. The links present the evidence. There's no evidence on the Wikipedia page. I'm sorry. Where's your evidence? Explain the experiment. Show me the fucking experiment, for fuck's sake. There's no experiment that shows the existence of a positron. It's an interpretation of an experiment. And as you pointed out, yeah, okay, well, the original picture could be a proton. Yeah, well, if it could be, I'm arguing, yeah, that's what it is. Positron is an extraordinarily bizarre concept. Antiparticle is absolute crap. I don't know why anybody rational would actually think there's antiparticles and the whole universe is constantly disappearing and then reappearing. I mean, if you want to believe that that's a credible theory, go ahead. But I'm saying that's extraordinarily mush sounding. That sounds like a big pile of crap. And until you show me real evidence, hard evidence, good evidence, I'm not believing the crap. Alright, the links present the evidence. That's a lie. Okay, they don't present any evidence whatsoever. They just diagram the theory. They show you a Feynman diagram. There, I drew a Feynman diagram. There, that's proof, isn't it? No, it's not proof at all. It doesn't prove anything. Oh, it's just, you're just telling the story. You're just saying, look, go look at the book. The 3 pigs exist. See, somebody drew 3 pigs. They drew the little straw house, the little brick house. All that stuff is right there in the drawing, for fuck's sake. How can you deny the drawing? It's the 3 pigs. They must exist. That's not evidence. Present the evidence that positrons are used in industry and do absolutely exist. So again, I don't know why he's such a fanatic for positrons. I just, you know, I mean, I don't know what it is about positrons that so turn him on, but I don't get it at all. I just can't imagine somebody thinking positron and an electron. Yes, there's just as many positrons flying around as electrons. I mean, it makes no fucking sense at all. How do positive, I mean, you can understand electrons, right? The nucleus of the atom is positive, net positive, strongly net positive. Why would a positron go anywhere near that? Why would it be in the atom anywhere? It just doesn't make any sense. Anyway. This is the final 2 where the 2 particles are not the positron and the electron. This is the final 2. This is the final two, where the two particles are not the positron and the electron. It is the positron and electron. Oh, proton and electron. This is the final two, where there are two particles, are not the proton and the electron. It is the positron and the electron. So again, I just don't... You say conventional physics knows how to weigh these things, and you're denying the weights. You're telling me that the positron isn't an electron, it's a big heavy proton. Well, no, it's not a proton, it's a you know, it doesn't make any sense. See the paper I just referenced. There's no paper, so again, what a pile of crap. Which does show the attractive repulsive forces as matter of ordinary particle collisions. Well, show me. Provide a link to, if you're going to sit there and say something is a good experiment or there's proof of something, then provide a fucking link or give me the title of it. Give me something I can search. What the fuck are you talking about? Alright. No blue or red particles are necessary. So again, I'm using blue and red. Could be square and round, could be wet and dry, could be lots of inverse relationship. So just play the game. Okay, fine. You can't understand metaphor and analogy. Okay. So anyway, what a pile of shit. Ugh. So this is the real problem in dissidency, obviously. And I would say, obviously, these people really just don't... They keep talking about evidence, but they never show any fucking evidence. You know, so it's, you know, it's impossible to have a conversation because they keep saying things have been proven or saying things have been established, and yeah, but they won't show you how any of that happened. And all of it, like I said, all the basic stuff, we can understand that, look, they've been showing the two-slit experiment for over 200 years, since Young first announced his silly diagram that doesn't work. And they've been making up stories. Okay, and there's no, you know, there's really no mystery if you understand that the surfaces is all it's about, is surfaces, and they're just point sources. They're just creating noise on those surfaces, and the noise, okay, can be converted into signal. You know, two pieces of noise can combine and be signal again, or two pieces of noise can combine and still be noise. And that simple explanation resolves the entire subject. No need for superposition, no need for entanglement, no need for all of this crap that they have made up. Alright, certainly no need for any positron, electron, whatever the fuck that would be. I mean, it's still, you know, why this? I mean, it seems so clear that space is empty. It's the same empty space between, inside the atom is empty space. It's the same empty space in empty space that's inside of an atom. That is a real thing. The non-existence of something is a real thing. And I don't know why people can't understand the universe is just, it's a push universe, and clearly the pushers are little tiny things, okay, and they can push really big things. But whatever. Fuck. I just never imagined this would be the problem. I mean, you know, you come up with such a simple diagram, explains so much, you know, charge, magnetism, electricity, all this stuff gets explained, is tangible, it's physical, you can understand, nice physical explanation, and I just didn't think that the resistance was going to be they're all already Muslims, you know, and they just can't be converted. Tragic. So anyway, just very depressing. So till the next time and such, yeah, that's what I'll say. Till the next time and such. Yeah, won't bother. Yeah, just. I mean, I could draw something, but there's no point. I've already drawn it, you know. Already said these things 4,000 times. So you people don't think you have to conserve momentum, and you really do believe in all of this magical physics. Yuck. You're so confident. Ugh. Just get the hell out of here. I mean, I don't want to hit this button. It's going to play the
We'll get
Professor
half the
Rowan
speed.
thing again. I guess I could turn that off. There we go. I could turn something else on. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Turn that back on. All right, so this has been a draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also. But as pointing out, the debate is still so broken. What we need is a debater who does the same thing I do, right? They make an assertion, they draw a picture of it, and then they give you a link to an experiment. Yeah, that kind of thing. That's what we need. All right. Till the next time and such.